Good evening, everybody. I'm Joshua Haberski with the Premium Cigar Association. This is our annual regional advocacy training. We are going to delve into the Northeast and kind of Mid-Atlantic in this session. I think one of the things that it's worth noting in kind of the overarching association side of things is that we are seeing a significant push downward with a lot of activities that, traditionally would be handled by the federal government. Obviously, everyone's aware that the federal government is shut down, and that policies, particularly negative policies, especially in the wake of some of the Medicaid funding gaps that exist, we are seeing a impetus for taxation increases by the states. So, that's something that's on our horizon to kind of combat that. We commissioned the board of directors and staff commissioned Dr. Ernie Goss of the University of Nebraska to do a study on tax caps. We are getting some of that preliminary data. I know that Kathleen in New York, we got some of that information over to you to review earlier today. So, we're kind of proactively doing the research side, getting the information out. We also renewed for the third year running our state grant program. This is, some seed money for new state associations as well as existing state associations and helping pay for their lobbyists. So we want to make sure that we as the association, help all of you at the local level, at the retail level. Obviously, we need to get more folks engaged with this. The recording will be sent out, and hopefully, folks listen in on what's going on because there are some significant challenges. I think everybody knows what's going on in California, but our staff time and our consultants, we've kind of pivoted our government affairs consultants over to strictly state. They're not doing anything federally right now. And I myself am kind of double dipping. I'm traditionally supposed to be doing federal government affairs, but Glenn needs some assistance. I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover. I think we've spent, dozens of hours the last 6 weeks on California alone. And, that's something that is, I would expect some major news to drop later this week on California. I'm not at liberty to really go into all the details on the public forum, but there is going to be some major initiatives by the association in that regard. Um, on the federal side of things, we're still monitoring tax increases. Obviously, we had the Women in PCA flying, which was extremely impactful with over 85 meetings. I'm kind of batting cleanup for any of the meetings that we may have missed. I had a Senate meeting yesterday, and I have one tomorrow, actually with Senator Schumer's office. So we are keeping the educational pace that we've traditionally done over the last 5 years at the federal level. It's kind of a constant. We'll cross or exceed that 100 meeting mark. Tax increases at the federal side of things seem to be on lock. The tariff situation, that has been something that I've been expressing with each of the offices. I met also with the National Economic Council at the White House, not last week, but the week before, and talked a little bit about the tariff situation. I think one of the things that we're looking at, in particular, is the um, making sure that they're constant so that, there's not these major swings and fluctuations from the retail side. Having to reprice things can be a daunting task over and over and again. Obviously, we are asking for the reduction of the tariff on Nicaragua in particular, which is at 18%. 60 over 60% of all premium cigar tobacco is coming from Nicaragua. That is particularly impactful in a negative sense to that. And our message is very clear. Like, we're not into it for overarching trade policy. We have a very specific issue set. And the concern is that you domestically cannot grow premium cigar tobacco at the pace and the demand of the retail market in the United States. 500 million cigars annually imported. And it's the region, it's the terroir, much like wine, as you all know, that is conducive in the Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Nicaragua, as well as a few other countries. We have a little bit of Connecticut broadleaf or Connecticut shade and Pennsylvania broadleaf, Florida sun grown. And we make note of that, of like, if part of the product uses any of that American made tobacco, that's another angle where we're looking for certain exemptions. So it's cost is certainly a challenge, especially in these northeastern states that have higher taxation, and a lot more restrictions. So that's something that we'll have to be aware of, not only as we're fighting to reduce taxes in New York, and other states in the Northeast, but we have to be mindful that they're, even if it seems excessively high, they may be actually trying to raise it even further. On that good news, I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Well, just to show that I can be bought. Teresa hasn't said a word. Please.
See it.
We're on mute.
That's an old shitty one. I got much better than that now. Can you come over here? I'll get you one of them.
I think it's a handsome hat, Glenn.
Yeah, it looks very nice. Thank you very much.
I'm going full NASCAR. Thank you, Josh. And as he mentioned, this is being recorded so that we can share it with the masses following these presentations. I'm going to give an overview of anticipated issues in the northeastern states, from really Washington, D.C. to Maine. And then I'm going to go over a collection of strategies and recommendations for addressing this from an organizational capacity level at the state level. So with that, just go through the list of states where we know we are anticipating issues. Maine had a horrendous tax increase during the course of this 2025 legislative season. Also, there was an attempt for probably the 10th time to get a flavored tobacco ban in the state of Maine. We're looking at having a proactive approach to tax rollback, tax relief, in light of this increase in the 3 states, and I'll get to the others in a moment, Bill, since they're in the Midwest, Indiana and Illinois, that also experienced dramatic tobacco tax increases in the course of the 25 legislative season. But Maine was a no-win situation. The governor had it included in her budget proposal. Traditionally, this proposal has been introduced as long as a flavor ban, almost a decade, and it traditionally had died in the Appropriations Committee because they have to come up with, the $20 million hole that a flavor ban would bring about. We've got a tax cap study underway that we'll chat about during the course of this presentation that we hope demonstrates to the legislative community what these tax increases cost a state. The cigar consumer, and Teresa and Dave can attest to this, the cigar consumer, and Kathleen, all of you in the retail community can attest to this. The cigar patrons of this country are very cost conscious. They will seek out less expensive alternatives to purchase the exact same cigar. So these proposed tax increases end up only costing the state money And our new economic analysis is going to clearly demonstrate that through the virtue of an independent economic analysis. So that's the approach we intend to take in Maine as well as Indiana and Illinois in the Midwestern states. Massachusetts. Josh and company know how I feel about visual aids and show and tell. These are two of the worst tax bills in America right here. H3074 and S2020 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These proposals would double the OTP tax in Massachusetts to 80%, making it the highest only to Utah in the entire country. Yesterday, I provided testimony to the Joint Revenue Committee of the Massachusetts Legislature. There were 10 speakers, about half opposed and half from the healthcare lobby, putting a lot of pressure on the legislature to enact this tax increase from 40 to 80%. There is competing legislation that would drop it from allies that are also in the majority party in the Massachusetts legislature. Also there, we have the home base of all things regarding the generational smoking ban proposals. Every other week, we participate in a coalition discussion opposing generational smoking bans at the local level. And this push to have generational smoking bans, no nicotine types of initiatives, was born in Massachusetts, in Brookfield, Massachusetts, and then followed by a Supreme Court decision, Massachusetts Supreme Court decision, that dubbed it legal for local governments to both enact these types of proposals as well as outright bans on the sale of any tobacco product. So there's legislation. They've targeted 90 local governments, 90. It's crept its way through approximately 20 local governments, with about half of them being successful. There is legislation in the statewide legislature to make it uniformed across the board statewide. And keep in mind, in Massachusetts, these local boards of health that enact these have unilateral power that supersedes a city council or a local government, a county government. They can do it unilaterally with no accountability, no election, no nothing other than a public hearing in the local government. So there's legislation that we support that would remove that authority from local boards of health. So there's give and take both sides of the equation, the pros and the cons in the Massachusetts legislature. And they've promised a vote on this tax bill in November. Right now, the conventional wisdom is it won't go forward at least during this calendar year. But that's going to be, as Josh noted, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the states to find a lot of money for Medicaid mandates come January. Just to give you an example, here in Virginia, in the last 45 days, the anticipated bill for Medicaid mandates has gone from $650 million to $2.1 billion in the last 45 days. And that's going to be happening nationwide. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on these tax proposals come January. In Vermont, we anticipate the reintroduction of flavor ban legislation, New Hampshire, possibility of tax legislation. Rhode Island has consistently had legislation introduced that would allow for expanded local authority over tobacco regulation and taxation, as well as independent tax bills. Connecticut, reintroduction of flavor ban is anticipated. New York, what can we say about our friends in New York? Kathleen. The tax increase proposals will be back in. Tax cap proposals will be resubmitted. Cigar bar legislation will be reintroduced, and flavor ban legislation will also be reintroduced. It's the moral equivalent of what we confront in California and some of the Western states. but it's a full-fledged agenda in the New York legislature that we'll come back to since you folks are represented on this call. Pennsylvania. Last night, about 8:30, I was listening to the Pennsylvania Health Committee on this bill, HB 880, which would remove smoking ban exemptions in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Whereas nobody really anticipates this legislation going anywhere, we have to take it seriously just because it's introduced. To give you an idea of how this works, there was a hearing on it to remove the exemptions for casinos and to bring vape and e-cigarettes under the smoking ban proposition. This legislation already has exemptions for cigar bars and cigar shops. That's the positive side. The negative is you never know when someone's going to sneak up behind you and try to take that away again. This legislation passed last night in the Health Committee 22-4. And I spoke to our friends in Pennsylvania before that. Again, traditionally on tax and policy issues of this nature, the Pennsylvania State Senate has been the firewall between taxation proposals and smoking ban exemption removal legislation. But again, you got to take it seriously because of the signal it sends by a very, very bipartisan vote. And keep in mind, the legislature is controlled by Democrats. And I was watching this hearing last night, and the Republican minority leader of the Pennsylvania House completely endorsed this bill. So that goes to prove, as Josh and I say thousands of times over and over again, cigar politics and tobacco politics is not a partisan issue, and that clearly demonstrates that. In New Jersey, there will be tax cap proposals from both Democrat and Republican members of the New Jersey legislature. We've had productive discussions regarding that with the retailers of New Jersey that have been diligent at having those bills introduced and reintroduced. Delaware tax legislation, both pro and con. By that, I mean that year after year, there's a carryover bill that would actually drop the tax rate in Delaware, sponsored by a member of the Delaware State Senate. There was a competing proposal to raise the tobacco taxes at the very end of this legislative session. Fully anticipate both of those bills being back in January. Maryland, I've got a file right here on show and tell. Maryland has done a diligent job. I'll call it the Feeney-Helmuth Commission on cigar bar legislation. It is a case study, and I'd be glad to share anybody that wants to email me to get a copy of their study. But they took a brilliant strategic approach to this cigar bar legislation, and I haven't seen it in my times nationwide. It's a model, especially in states that it's tougher to get this type of legislation across the threshold. They established a study committee that's sanctioned by the legislature, that has sitting members of the House and Senate of the Maryland legislature on it. It has representatives from the healthcare community, state agencies from the healthcare side of the equation, from state agencies in Maryland, all of them, and they've conducted a 1.5-year study that, I mean, some of the hearings were challenging at best. I'll just put it that way. But they so methodically picked apart the pro and the con issues associated with cigar bar legislation simply for the ability to issue alcohol permits to only to existing cigar shops. And it got into everything from air circulation to permitting to mixed beverage permitting to the BYOB laws that are enacted in Maryland. It picked apart every conceivable issue, and they issued a legislative study, so it's sanctioned by the legislature, coming up with a proposal that was unanimously supported, which means the healthcare agencies of Maryland endorsed this study to bring forth this legislation in January. So whether the bill goes forward or not, it really is a living, breathing case study on how to approach that, again, especially in states that have challenges with our types of issues. And we don't anticipate anything of a challenging nature in the District of Columbia. Excuse me. Grab a drink of water here. So are there any questions regarding the states? I know there's a limited number on this call, but are there any questions about any of the state stuff that I've covered so far? Before I get into the more generic types of strategic questions, Kathleen, is there anything you want to share, since this is being recorded, that you'd like to share with your brethren in New York regarding your legislative strategy and advocacy efforts?
Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting myself. Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Actually, speaking of New York, we have in the Senate and Assembly a license to sell alcohol in our lounges in New York. And we're getting ready to meet with the SLA in New York because they are looking to expand their licenses to include some other unique types of venues. So we feel like we might fit into what they're looking to do with these new types of licenses. So that is some good news and some headway we're making with that. I'd love to see the Maryland study. I think that could help us with our meeting with the liquor authority. And in New York, we kind of switched gears last session where we're doing a remote sellers, where we want the companies that are shipping into New York when they hit a certain threshold to remit tax into New York State along with our 50-cent tax cap. So we've just revamped, reworded our language thanks to your help and the help of PCA, to get the proper language put into place, along with that tax cap study. So I feel like now we actually have, proof in hand that we can go and speak with legislators to show them how this will benefit New York.
Thank you. That's a good segue into the first piece of the puzzle, and that is state associations. In the northeastern states, we're lucky to have a concentration of them. Different levels of activity, but Maine is coming together with a state association. We're working with our retailers to do the same in Massachusetts. There's a very, very active New Hampshire association. There was a Connecticut association that was formed that was successful at the cigar bar legislation 2 years ago, and they've remained a stable coalition. Of course, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland was one of the first in the country. So all in all, we have about 26 state associations nationwide, again, at some level of activity and organization. And that's the bedrock of our network. PCA can't afford to put lobbyists in every state. We rely heavily on our retail partners to carry that message, and we help with regard to grassroots activation, which we'll talk about in a second, but also in terms of the provision of testimony to legislative committees and to do the legwork necessary with legislators to defend and work for this industry at the state capitol level. The next piece of this puzzle is absolutely critical, and that is legislator outreach. I'll give you a case study. There was a bad tax bill a couple of years ago that was introduced in Nevada, and I called one of our retail members in Las Vegas, and it was not Michael Fry. And I said, "Who's your legislator? They're critical on this committee, and we need you to reach out to them." And they said the words that I hate hearing the most from anybody: "I don't know. I don't know." And when you say you don't know your own legislator, that's the fundamentals of us having an active and engaged and successful advocacy effort. Every retail tobacconist in this country should be on a first name basis with their own legislator. whether they agree with you or not, they should know who you are. That when you pick up the phone, when you send an email, you're going to get a response because you've got a relationship with your members of your respective House and Senate at the state level. And this holds true for your city council and county government level. The tobacco sector as a whole is too much under threat not to have those types of relationships. Again, I'll give you another case study, and I'll because she's an old friend of Dave's on here, and it's a brilliant case study to highlight this point. Linda Squire in California is having a tough time with smoking in her cigar shop right now. Her city council member is not responding. That's unacceptable. And Linda and I are working on that. And now she's going to have to go through to city council to provide public testimony on why her shop should be exempt from smoking ban regulations. But it just shows and demonstrates through Nevada to Maryland, and I could give you case studies across the country. You've got to have that personal relationship, no matter how they feel about you, with your respective legislators at the state and local level. So over the next quarter, going into the January 26th session, it's critical that our retailers in the northeastern states and throughout the country call, write, and schedule a meeting in their district offices right now before the 26th session begins, whether you've got issues or not. Just make sure they know that your business is there and that you're watching what's going to be happening, because again, there's going to be so much fiscal pressure on the states come January that no stone can be left unturned. In the next 3 months, this last quarter of the year has got to be spent having those relationships and having those discussions to say, don't threaten my business when you go into session in January. We'll help you script it. We'll help you schedule it. We'll let you know who you need to go see, but it's got to happen over the course of the next 3 months. Thirdly, know your issues, know the tax, the flavor, the counter arguments to all of these, or if you're supporting pro legislation like Cigar Bar in Maryland, know the arguments that can help push that type of legislation over the finish line. Invite your legislators to your shop. Have them in. Show them that we're not killing children and we're not bringing public health threats to the huddled masses. Let them see the demographic that is sitting in your cigar shops. That it's, we all know what that is and who that is. And we know it's not children, which was a big part of my testimony to the Massachusetts legislature yesterday. Just demonstrating through the evidence that's been garnered over the last several years, demonstrating that the premium cigar demographic is not America's youth. So getting that message across is critical, and inviting them to your shop to have a cigar town hall meeting with you and your patrons is a great way to demonstrate who and what this industry is all about. Use cigaraction.org. That is our portal to the states. It is our way of communicating on all the legislative issues at the state level. It is how we notify you and your customers in real time about legislative hearings and about petitions that we've set up supporting or opposing given legislation. Put a link to cigaraction.org on your website so that your customers can sign up and get those types of announcements. Sponsor a Capitol Hill Day in your state capital. Get your legislative brethren together, and nobody knows this better than our friends in New York here that consistently trek their way to Albany to get their message across. Maryland is masterful at this. Virginia is masterful at this. And that type of a model of having a Capitol Hill Day is essential to demonstrating who you are to your respective legislators, and we can help you organize those types of events with different strategies. Coalition building. Reach out to like-minded brethren out there that agree with your positions on our issues. A lot of the independent, libertarian, pro-business types of organizations in some places, not Indiana, But in some places, chambers of commerce can be allies. Organizations like Americans for Tax Reform, Americans for Prosperity. Josh can rattle off a few others, but like-minded pro-business types of organizations that can back up our positions are good ways of demonstrating that it's about more than just your local business. Tax cap study. Right now, PCA and the CAA have a study underway to demonstrate the fiscal impact of tax caps in the states. It also is examining the fiscal impact of high taxation in the states that we're going to be able to use in places like Massachusetts. Already, Kathleen is planning on utilizing this study in New York. It'll come in handy in New Jersey, where a study was done in 2014 and hasn't been updated since. It's going to be very beneficial to virtually every state in the northeastern part of the country. We anticipate that study being done in the next 30 to 45 days, and we look forward to a national release of it because it's a first of its kind. Being conducted by Dr. Ernie Goss, a acclaimed economist out of Creighton University in Nebraska, who's done a lot of legislative and fiscal analysis work all over the country. That just gives it an air of credibility that those types of issues need when we're advocating for tax caps and opposing tax increases in the states. So with that, Litany, I will shut up and take any questions you might have, hoping that Kathleen can throw me at least one curveball. And Josh, I think you were going to turn off the recording for the question and answer portion of this.